We are in Berlin, so what's the hard truth about international couples?
They are not only differing from individual perspective, but you also have differences between cultures. So you're playing a much bigger game here.
Is it more romantic?
Or more fragile?
I would say it's more intentional, right? Because both of the partners put a lot of effort to make it work. We should know that love is not easy, right? Falling in love is easy. But the problem becomes when...
She is Alessia Marchi, an Italian relationship psychologist and love researcher now living in Berlin.
And one of the first in the world to study romantic compatibility in a scientific way.
I'm from Verona, which is the city of love, at least in Italy. It's a city of Romeo and Juliet. And so I think since we're young, we feel this energy in the city, this compatibility, and other things like attraction or emotional connections are very different. We are attracted to who is similar to us. We get along to who is similar. If there are differences, it becomes a struggle. And this is true. I'm not saying it's not, it's true. But we rarely talk about the creative strategies that also humans find to get together with a diverse world. We're all humans, right? So we have very human fears.
Romeo and Julieta, they were both probably emotional compatible, but probably on the other stuff they weren't. And you come from a place that is where actually the story comes from.
Yeah.
And we were discussing before, did that play a role in your life and why you wanted to dedicate to research about love?
Maybe subconsciously. I'm from Verona, which is the city of love, at least in Italy. It's a city of Romeo and Juliet. And so I think since we're young, we feel this energy in the city. The city is so beautiful. The streets are really narrow and romantic. So I think we feel it. But I think it was also an individual choice. I've always been very attracted to relationship and to relationship dynamics and patterns. So I would observe maybe my family or my relatives or my friends getting into relationships, talking about relationship. I would observe their dynamics. I would analyze them when I was really young, maybe like 6 or 7. And I thought that was something everyone was doing. Then I realized it was maybe more of a tendency, an individual tendency. And I said, okay, there's clearly something here. I need to go deeper. And since I'm really young, I've done a lot of projects and initiatives about relationships. So I created the biggest speed dating events in my hometown, and I did a lot of matching experiments. I was trying to create a scientific dating app. After that, I really try to do a lot of possible initiatives in the field, because I think it's truly what moves me.
What does the science tells us about compatibility that a simple emotion is not telling us?
So I think what people usually get confused, and maybe I would start from here, is compatibility and other things like attraction or emotional connections are very different. So on one side, we have compatibility, and compatibility is more like a state or a functioning system. So we are compatible with someone if who we are, meaning our lifestyle, our values, our moral, our preferences, align well with another person's lifestyle, values, etc. So it means that we don't have to really work to change who we are. Just the way we are with that person, it works well. We fit together. It works without a lot of effort. So some effort is needed, but there's not too much effort, too much challenge, too much friction. So compatibility is a state. You can imagine also, maybe in tech, imagine an application or a software that is compatible with a device. It means that it just works well without friction. So this is what we would define as compatibility. But then there are several other elements that come into play. For example, attraction. Attraction is a pull. So it's not a state, it's a movement. I'm attracted by someone. And that is emotions also. They are also a lot of forces, and they go in all directions. And emotional connections that I think sometimes we mistake with compatibility is, as the word says, emotional, right? So it doesn't really have to do with the state that we're in, but rather with the connection that we have. So I can be very compatible with someone, meaning that we get along and we have same preferences, we can live in the same house with no friction, but maybe I still don't feel an emotional connection. Or I can feel a lot of emotional connection, but when I live with this person, physically in the same place or even emotionally, somehow we are not compatible. We don't get along. We fight too much. There's too much friction. So these are very different concepts. They can sometimes go hand in hand. If I'm compatible with someone, I can develop an emotional affection or an emotional connection, but not all the times. And just because I have a connection with someone doesn't mean that we are compatible in life.
Because as you said, like we can be like same values, maybe same, I don't know, religion, same hobbies, but there's no real emotion or real emotional connection. How do which one shall we prioritize? Or can we have both?
So ideally, we can have both. And this is actually, the time that we live in is actually probably the first time in history and in cultures where we can have the privilege to have both. So we have the privilege to find someone that we are compatible with, right? Because we get to choose the person. Arranged marriages are less common, especially in the Western world, and we can travel a lot. We can meet people from all over the world. So we're also exposed to more people, which statistically gives us the possibility to meet more compatible people, which again is a privilege that we didn't have in the past. So we can find compatibility, and we can also find emotional connection. There is a part of the emotional connection that is maybe more like a mystery. So there is a small percentage that truly we cannot control, but there's a big part of it that we can create with commitment, for example. If we work on the relationship, we create meaningful moments together, we spend time, we support each other. If you do, there's a list of things that you can do. If you do that, that creates emotional connection. So yeah, ideally, if you find someone compatible, and it's hard, but not so hard, and you put in the effort, you can have probably the best relationship.
I mean, I have seen this show Indian Matchmaker on Netflix, and I find it very interesting. Even though it's not a science on the scientific method that we know today by the academics, the matchmaker there, she's using a method to try to find the compatible traits of each person with the emotions. Well, she says that in that show that the emotions can come later, but she tries to find other stuff that they can be compatible, such as a language or religion or values or goals, right? Do you want to have children? Do you don't want to have children? Do you want to work a lot or to be more homey? All of those stuff. Prioritize them before emotion or even before physical attraction. In a way, you're a matchmaker, in a way.
Yeah. And I think even if it sounds weird that you would work on compatibility before thinking of physical attraction or emotional connection, it actually makes sense because you don't really have a lot of role in physical attraction. You cannot really decide if two people are going to be physically attracted to each other, sexually attracted, mentally attracted. So on attraction, you have very limited game to play. Also on romantic connection that they will develop, because it also depends on the moment of life they're in, the phase of life, the context, the family. It depends on so many other factors. So it makes sense to work on what is workable, which is compatibility.
There's a study that actually was featured on Forbes magazine about 24 different dimensions of compatibility. Things like we were saying values or style, humor, even how we can relax, and that it's just more than we just get along, right? So from your experience, which of these dimensions do couples ignore the most, and why does it matter in the long run?
I think so. We usually think of the common ones like values and morals and hobbies, and some of them work really well, but I think there are some that we forget often. One that I always like to mention is a sense of humor. And some people might agree with this and some might disagree, but sense of humor is actually such a good key to have. And in a relationship, you need to have a similar sense of humor because it really helps to have more fun when you're having fun, to deal with conflicts when you're having a conflict. It also helps increase connection. So the type of connection, type of bonding becomes much higher if you have the same sense of humor. And also, sense of humor correlates with intelligence, especially with logical intelligence. And logical intelligence is one of the main factors of compatibility. So people that tend to be on the same level of logical intelligence tend to be highly compatible. And so if sense of humor correlates with that, then it goes from there. So I think that we tend to forget, but that's a big one. And maybe the other one, which is an elephant in the room, is what is your expectation from a relationship? What ideas do you have a relationship? How should the relationship or a partner look like? Because we sometimes get into relationship thinking that it will somehow work. If there's love, it will work. But if we have significantly different ideas of what type of relationship we want, when do we want it, how should it look like, there's going to be a clash pretty soon, or maybe later on, which maybe is even worse. And it's a really one of the biggest deal breakers. And I think, again, sometimes we underestimate how important this is. This is from a compatibility perspective. But then I think we also tend to forget from a personal level that we are also bringing something into the relationship. So it's not just about how are we compatible in this and this element, but it's also, am I putting in the right effort to make the relationship work? So if I'm with the most compatible person in the world, but I don't put in the effort, it's still not going to be a perfect relationship. So there are some personal elements as well, effort, commitment, energy that I put into the relationship. And also the best, the most successful and most satisfying relationships, they happen when one of the partners, ideally both of them, have some good human traits. So you don't have necessarily to be a good partner, you have to be a good human being. So you have to be kind, supportive, patient, understanding, wanting to meet in the middle. And this really increases significantly the quality of the relationship that you will have.
Is the case that both of them are bad human beings, or like not as so good human beings?
Is the case like it happens? Of course it happens. But it makes it harder. Because when you have a conflict and you want to go out of the conflict, do you know how to do it? If you don't know how to do it, this conflict will stay in the back of your head. And it will come again when you're talking about something else, maybe talking about plans for the weekend or washing the dishes. You will have it in the back of your head. So if you don't know how to deal with conflicts, it will stay. If you don't know how to support your partner will not feel seen and loved. And so decrease attraction. So it can happen, and it does happen. But it's not where you want to be.
So at least one of them should be a good human being.
At least, ideally both, yeah.
Because in my case, I have the feeling that my wife is the one that is the good human being in the relationship, not because apart from the home dynamics, I think she's the one who is checking how to care about other people, or how to volunteer, or how to connect with people and supporting in the community, or like she's the one who says first, I'm going to give money to a homeless, and she doesn't have anything. She tells me, do you have a coin or something? And I'm the one that, why? And I have the feeling that she's like my moral compass.
Hey, what's up, guys? Sorry to interrupt this amazing program, but I need a bit of help. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can probably see the subscribe button. If you do, it would mean the world if you can subscribe. That's the best way to support the show. Because when you subscribe, I can show it to potential guests and brands and stuff like that. And it's the best way to grow the show. Have cooler conversations, have cooler guests, and it helps in everything so much. So, if you don't mind, thank you so much. Now, let's get back to a conversation.
When we bring cultural difference into the picture, such as like language, traditions, even ideas about love, from your experience, what makes compatibility even harder? For example, for international couples, we are in Berlin, so we tend to see a lot of international couples, either Germans with Mexicans, like in my case, or Italians with French. And, it's a city where we see a lot of international couples. What makes it harder, and what helps these couples to survive these struggles? And what's the hard truth about international couples?
So, based on how we defined compatibility before, right? So if compatibility means having similar preferences, lifestyle, ideas, values, traditions, then of course, international couple will struggle more with that, clearly, because they are not only differing from individual perspective, which could happen in even in a small village, we could have differences between people, but you also have differences between cultures. So you're playing a much bigger game here.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep that into account, that reaching a stage of compatibility will be harder. It's not impossible, and as you mentioned, it happens a lot in Berlin, so it is possible, but it will be harder. And I think what could really help and what really does help, I would say mainly two things. The first factor is curiosity and openness. So those people that can be in international relationship, they tend to be very open towards diversity, which is not the case for everyone, but they tend to be. They tend to be curious. They tend to want to experiment with different food, different trips, different cultures. They want to learn new languages. Maybe they already know new languages. And also, there's also a fact that if you are in an international relationship, it means that at least one of you traveled to another country at some point.
Yeah.
Either you both live in a new country or at least one of them moved to the other, right? So it's already people that have a predisposition to travel and to meet new culture, which helps a lot. Because if you were more traditionalist and more set in stone, it would be harder to find a compromise. So I think this is one part. And also these people that can be in this relationship, they are usually more prone to meet in the middle. They give the benefit of the doubt to the partner more. They know that the language is different, so they want to understand the nuances. They don't want to assume. They don't want to read between the lines. They ask more questions. So if they don't understand something, they don't assume, but they ask. So I think this attitude of not taking things for granted, wanting to understand, it minimizes misunderstandings and it really helps the couples survive.
Because you know that maybe some stuff might be missing in translation, for example.
Yeah. And you don't assume that it's the person, going against you, but you always have this idea that maybe it's their culture or maybe in the language, that's how they say it.
Yeah.
And this shield helps a lot in terms of assuming wrongly or reading between the lines. Yeah.
True, because your own culture, when you're dealing in your own language or your own culture, you know that what some expression actually means.
Exactly.
And if you know that, if they said that, even though there's a lot of things or meaning behind the words that you can automatically assume.
Yeah.
When you're from different cultures, the person might say it with the meaning behind the lines and the other person maybe will not get it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the person assumes something, they would think, well, maybe I'm just misinterpreting something here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And does love across borders is like more romantic or more fragile?
I would say it's more intentional, actually. Maybe if I had to choose between the two, maybe I would say it's more romantic in the sense that it's a love that we fight more for. So in the classical sense of romance, there is more romance, there is more fighting for this love. It comes less natural. But I would say it's more intentional, right? Because both of the partners put a lot of effort to make it work. They maybe travel across countries. They make sure that meeting the family, when the families meet, there's no cultural differences or cultural clash. They redefine their agreements. They can come to terms with very, very big differences culturally. They create their new languages, their new inside jokes, their new rules. So there's a lot of effort and intention that comes into loving internationally.
On the couples that you have been treating, what's the common thing that you notice there? What's the pattern of their, for example, when they come to you with some problems, what's the common one there?
I think this is funny, actually. International couple, they have their own specific problems, but most of the problems or challenges that they face are more human problems or typical relationship problems rather than cultural problems. I think culture adds one more layer of complexity, but it's rarely the one problem. But it definitely adds complexity because one thing is wanting to know the other person's culture, being open, and one thing is truly accepting their culture, which means even when I'm tired, I should accept your culture. Even when I really don't want to do it. Even if I've been doing it every day, I still have to do it today as well. I have to do it in the long run, probably forever. if we have children, I have to accept your culture for my children as well, right? So it has so many implications. So again, one thing is going to a country, getting to know the culture, being curious, learning about it, but living with a different culture forever, coming to terms with it, having to be challenged constantly can be really hard. Even if we are very open, there can still be topics that are very core and fundamental for us that we still have to deal with it. A lot of cultures, for example, they feel very different about timing. I'm thinking, now you mentioned Mexican, maybe Latino, Spanish. They have a different idea of time. Also, I'm Italian, so we also have a different idea of time versus maybe Germans or people from Switzerland. They have different ideas, and this might be a small conflict one day, but then it builds up. Or the way I think about families, how much families can come into the picture. What does it mean to create a family? How do we deal with money, with religion, with food? Or you also have more complex things like language and showing emotions. In some, for example, Asian cultures, it's not okay to show emotions. And then you have some more Mediterranean cultures where you show emotions a lot. And accepting forever that my partner will struggle with this or that I will not get to that level that I'm used to can be tricky in the long run.
And what about for example, traditional roles in a...
Also.
Because let's say, also from where I come from, maybe it's changing little by little, but there's more a traditional role, like, you know, yeah, I think it's implied what I mean by traditional role in comparison to maybe a Nordic country, right? So could be a reason why it clashes a lot, where the man feels like, oh, I need to be the provider in the family. And something that I notice, and I've spoken with a lot of people, especially men, that when they come here from Latin America, sometimes it's because they met someone from Europe. So they come here, but they come with a disadvantage on their careers. So sometimes they study, I don't know, to be a lawyer in their country, but they come here and they cannot work as a lawyer.
Yeah.
So they cannot be the provider as they used to be before. And now they need to accept the idea that maybe their wife is the one bringing the most of the income, and makes them feel sometimes not empowered enough to feel like, oh, I'm completing my role that I was being told for my whole life. I'm failing as a man or as a husband.
Yeah. It's a thing that I see actually pretty often in my work and also with my friends. I see this idea of gender roles or gender expectations. It can become really hard if in your country you learn that this is how it works, that these are the roles, these are the expectations. You might also, to some extent, overlap them with your identity, right? So you're not only expected to do that, but you like to do that. You like to be this person. It becomes your identity and the identity that you want to have. And then you come here or you move to another culture and you have to adapt to their roles. Or you have a partner from a different culture and you have to adapt to their expectations. And sometimes it's really hard to meet in the middle. Sometimes finding the middle is very unrealistic. If I think that men should do this and women should do that, can I really come to a real middle ground, a real compromise that feels good for both of them? It's hard, yeah.
We'd like to thank one of our sponsors, WonderTax, for supporting this podcast. WonderTax makes filing your tax declaration in Germany simple, so you can easily claim your tax refund. Try it out for free and only submit if you're completely satisfied. Visit gutentag.wundertax.de or check the link in the description. Now, back to the conversation.
I mean, the thing is, the point of finding a place in the middle is always the hard one, because if one is happy, the other one is unhappy. The middle ground is not, we're just middle happy.
Yeah.
So sometimes middle ground, how do we find real middle ground in a couple without being just mediocrely happy both, instead of one happy and one's not happy?
It's hard. It's very hard. And I think if the two people start from very polarized places, it's really hard to come in the middle and be happy. But let's say they are both on the moderate side, that can work, and it usually works. We need to be really clear with our partner as to what is my standing point at the beginning. So where am I actually starting from? What is it that I would like ideally? And only when that is very clear, when I say it very bluntly and honestly, then we can find the middle ground. We can start talking, discussing, how would you feel if I did that? Can we find the 50-50 that doesn't have to be actual 50-50, but maybe it's 60-40 in this department and then 70-30 in this other? Can we find a solution that feels fair for us? And sometimes it's hard to know it, but we can also test it. So we can say, let's give this strategy 3 weeks. Let's try it for 3 weeks. Let's see how we feel after that. Because the problem is that even if I try to be nice with my partner and I try to come their way, so I don't meet in the middle exactly, but I try to make them happier, this will build resentment. It will build guilt. I should have spoken. I didn't do it. Now I cannot do it, and I have to live with this. It will build resentment. It will enter inside conflicts in a very implicit way. So we don't understand why we're fighting. We don't connect it to that agreement because it's so far in the past, but it still has implications. So it's really important that we know where we stand, we talk clearly about how to get in the middle, and we reassess. Like over time, we test it, we experiment, we give it a try. But it's hard. I agree.
You're in an international relationship.
Yes.
Has it worked for you? Or what has been the hardest part for you?
I think it worked. It worked a lot. My partner is very... he has this tendency to come in the middle. I also have this tendency, so I think it's easy to meet in the middle. Plus, working with so many couples, I think gives you the right perspective on what it feels to be on the outside, what it feels to be the partner. So I think maybe that's a lucky part in this regard. I think maybe for me the hardest part was to deal with some differences in time, in scheduling. You know, we have very different idea of what it means to be early or late or in time, or how unpredictable things can go. He's from India, so I went to a couple of Indian weddings, and things are so unpredictable. You never know when things are going to happen. The ceremony is supposed to start at 10, and it starts 4 hours later.
Wow.
The main ceremony happens in the night, at 3 a.m. in the night. It happens so chaotically and random. And for me, that I need to be much more organized, it was hard. But I think even in that case, you come with an open mind. You come with curiosity. You understand that your versions of reality is just one of the possible alternatives of the reality. The way you live, the way you think, the way you experience things is one of the possibilities, is not the one.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing about weddings. I mean, also my wife was a bit irritated also at a wedding, at an American wedding, that it was also it's supposed to start at 5, but I think the ceremony started at 6:30, and she was stressed and everything, like, we're gonna be late, and I was like, take it easy. No, we're late. And then we were there, and we had to wait and wait and wait. And she was very irritated about it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's in the daily examples. Yeah.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about emotional and cultural compatibility. But in today's world, so much of love begins with an algorithm. Dating apps, some filters, bios, your emojis even. And you have created some compatibility systems and even host more like scientific-driven speed dating events.
Yes.
So I have to ask, what are dating apps getting right, and what are they getting dangerously, and what are they getting completely wrong, even dangerously wrong?
Most of the dating is now has shifted towards dating online and virtual dating. And I think on one side, they are doing something right in the sense that they understood that love is a numbers game. So the more people you meet, the more likely you are to meet someone who's compatible. It's just the basic probability. So in that way, they help a lot. They expose you to more people in your city, in your country, even across borders. If you have a job that usually doesn't allow you to meet people, maybe you work night shifts or you're just really busy, they give you a possibility to meet someone anyways. If you don't like to go to clubs, you can still meet people on dating apps. If you don't have a lot of friends, you can still meet people there. So I think what they do in a way is they show you more people. They give you more accessibility, which is something we didn't have in the past. And this is a good side. But I think that is actually also the main problem, because you are exposed to so many people you might have choice paralysis. You might not even know how to select people, how to choose them. You might have the feeling that there are endless people, so I can behave how I want with everyone because there will still be someone waiting. You start to develop tendency towards perfectionism. So I want someone who is absolutely perfect. Why? Because there are so many people, one of them must be perfect, and I want to look for this one, which means I will put less commitment and less effort in my own relationship. I will not try to fix it. So it creates a lot of these implications. Plus, the way dating apps works right now, they focus a lot on short-term dating, short-term relationships. So it could be sexual relationship, one-night stand, or even maybe a few weeks or months, but they don't really invest in long-term relationships. And don't get me wrong, it can happen that you go on a date and you even get married. But again, that's basic statistics. It just happens, right? It could happen with someone you meet at the bar or at work. But they are not helping in the way that they work on compatibility, that they show you someone who's more compatible. And the factors that they focus on when it comes to algorithm or what you see on their profiles, it's usually factors that don't really matter in compatibility. So hobbies, for example. We think hobbies have a role, but they actually don't really. At least science says that. Favorite music. We think it has a value, it has a meaning. It doesn't really, right? So there are a lot of things that people don't know actually has almost no value when it comes to compatibility, but still we assume that they are important in a relationship. And those are usually the information you find on dating apps. So I think it's a bit, we are just playing a different game here.
Yeah, I mean, this how's it called, paradox of choice, right?
Yeah.
It makes it very hard. And what you said, that since you have an endless choice, you see a lot of choice, you think it's endless. So you can have it in any flavor, in any combination you want it. So it makes you feel like when I want to find the right one, I will just settle. But it is not an endless source of people to date. So eventually you're already probably met the one that could have fitted you the most. You're waiting for a more compatible one. And then it just goes downhill from that. Could be, right?
Yeah. It could be that you met so many people you're scientifically compatible with, but somehow you didn't think it through enough. You didn't put enough effort. You said maybe it's not the right time of life. And so maybe you met already the people you are most compatible with in your life and you don't know. And also, the other big problem that comes with it is if I think there's an endless choice, then it doesn't really matter not only if I put effort or don't put effort, but I can also behave how I want, which means I can engage in really disruptive behavior. I can ghost people. I can say bad things about people. I can have really negative behaviors towards the other person, and it will not really matter. Also because everything is virtual. So we don't have any kind of accountability on the app. The way it works in the past in villages is that you would get recommended to someone by your friends or by your family members. So you had a sort of accountability to that. You could not ghost the person. You could not say bad things to the person because then you were accountable. You had to explain it to your father or to your friends. Why did you treat that person like that? Why did you ghost them? What happened? You don't need to have this accountability now because the people you date are somewhere in the world. It's all virtual. There are no connection. No one knows who these people are. So it also gives you the possibility to be a version of yourself which is more mean, not necessarily kind.
Yeah, I mean, that thing about accountability, you're totally right. For example, I had the experience that I recommended a friend or to date or how's it called? I presented to her. Yeah, this is my friend. And they sort of got along and they started to date, but at the end, he didn't want anything serious. So she was very disappointed about the situation. And another friend that come on, also, she told me, what is wrong with him? Why he did that to her? And it put me in a place that I'm like, I don't know. I'm not responsible. I just introduced them. I didn't do anything. Why am I so, why are you blaming me? And then I was like, okay, I don't introduce anyone because it made me feel like, okay, now I feel like I'm responsible if I introduce them together. I feel like I gave my endorsement that this is a nice guy and maybe he's not. And now I'm to blame. So brings that a little bit in the situation. And also, if you're my friend, yeah, maybe he will say, maybe I will not ghost her, or if I don't want to date her, I will do it in a more
empathic
way. So so no one in the circle of friends thinks that I'm an asshole, for example.
Exactly.
And also, I mean, I have a friend. I mean, because I was already in a relationship when this whole online dating thing became a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But from a friend, also, he told me, yeah, I have the feeling that from his perspective, women are becoming more narcissist on dating apps. That was his feeling. Or in the podcast previously that I had, Lulu Johnson also, she said that she met like guys that maybe they're too entitled now because there's a lot of choice. Maybe before in times you didn't have the chance to get so many dates as now. So maybe guys were like valuing more that date as nowadays. They think, okay, the next one, I can get more dates. So I don't need to behave well. I can ghost them. I can treat them not in a gentleman way. I can be what I want without any accountability. In when the data says that two people are a great match, but there's no spark in real life, what is this telling us? What does that mean? When everything looks fine, but there's not the spark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as a psychologist, I would say that there's no spark. It's as simple as that. So you can be highly compatible with someone, but it doesn't mean that the spark will come. So it means that this person you are compatible with. So it can be a great friend for you. It can be a great flatmate also. If you share the same house, if you probably share the same habits, lifestyle, ideas on how to keep the house. So perfect flatmates, perfect person to travel with. If you have the same ideas on travels, on timing. So you are compatible in the sense you don't have to adjust too much. But it doesn't automatically then mean that the spark will be there. So I think it means exactly that this person should stay in your life, because finding someone compatible is not easy. They should stay, but not necessarily as a partner. Maybe, though, I should also add that spark can also evolve over time. So it can appear and it can also disappear. So spark should not be the compass that we choose relationships with. Because again, if we are really compatible with someone and we spend a lot of time together and we create a connection, then the spark can appear over time. It can develop. And same way, if we just follow the spark, it can happen that at some point we realize there's no more spark because it disappears, and we're also not compatible, which is the worst situation.
That would be the worst situation. I mean, especially when a relationship gets older and then you have kids and everything.
Yeah,
that's the spark seems to be less, or sometimes seems to disappear.
Yeah.
But if the spark is the only compass that we have, then people will say, "Oh, my relationship is over. Therefore, I should break up because there's no spark."
Yeah, exactly.
And in other cases, yes, you said it can grow again, or can grow or again, or even the first time. Because I don't know where I said that sometimes spending a lot of time with someone can create this spark, this emotional connection. Therefore, we see that a lot of the affairs happen in the workplace.
Yeah.
Like this guy from the Coldplay concert.
Yeah.
Because the more time you spend with someone, maybe you feel like attraction, or you feel the why you're you feel more connection between them. You said you have a boyfriend from India, so probably their parents or a lot of family members were arranged marriage, and they have to grow some emotional connection over time.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how it used to work in the past, almost in everywhere in the world, and it still works like this when it comes to arranged marriages. There's no spark unless you're super lucky. There can be no spark, and you have to build it. You have to build some kind of connection, some kind of spark yourself, and this is not impossible. What you mentioned, spending time with this person, seeing this person increases attraction. This is actually a thing. It's called mere exposure. It's a bias. It's an effect. And the more we see the same person in the same environment, the more likely we are to find this person attractive. So I don't know if it ever happened to you. Maybe you go to work or university and you see the same girl or boy sitting there. And the first time you don't really think anything of it. And then over time, you see the same person in the same place and you start to notice, I really like the hair. I really like how they smile. And you start to develop this attraction just from mere exposure. So just from merely being exposed to this person over time. And this has to do with the fact that we trust the person if we see them over time, if they are already in the environment where we are. So it means they did a good choice because we are in that environment. So they also chose to be. So good choice. Plus, we trust them because we see how they behave. We notice how they interact with others, how they interact with the environment, and we start to trust them. So even when we create a connection, a relationship, we will have higher trust. And there's no, let's say, pressure to start a romantic relationship. So even that helps. Sometimes when we go on dates, there's a lot of pressure, performance, which doesn't happen if you organically meet someone. So yeah, that absolutely happens. But maybe back to the spark topic. If you feel that at some point in your marriage or in your relationship, spark decreases, which again is completely normal, and that's the way we should think about it, you can do a lot of actions to bring it back. So the idea is not that the spark should be there forever. The idea is that, can I accept that the spark will disappear and I will have to put in effort to bring it back? And do I know how to bring it back? That's more the way we should think about it.
What's the first step to bring back the spark?
So the spark, when we talk about the spark, we usually mean talk from very physiological perspective. So it's usually dopamine, right? The hormone of dopamine that comes into your body versus the hormone of oxytocin, which comes afterwards. So dopamine is, as we know, excitement, curiosity, unpredictability. When you meet someone new, that's how you feel. You don't know this person, so you want to ask questions, you get curious. You don't know what you're going to do. So there's unpredictability. You don't know what you're going to say. Am I going to impress them? What are they going to say, right? So there's all this excitement, which releases dopamine. And that's how we feel the spark. Then over time, it becomes more stable. So it turns into oxytocin. So it changes. We start to trust the person more. We don't have to perform anymore. It becomes more stable, more predictable, which is a good part because we could not create a family with someone that is only excitement and novelty. But if we want to bring it back, we just need to remember this. What is it that gives me excitement, curiosity? What is an activity that I can do today, which I've never done before? Can we start taking a cooking class together, which we've never done before? Can I teach my partner something and they teach me something? Can we maybe go on a date where we pretend we're strangers and get curious about each other and ask each other questions as if we're strangers? So intentionally do activities that bring back uncertainty, unpredictability, curiosity.
Okay, like a surprise date night.
Also,
we have a date night. I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do. You just follow my lead.
That's a perfect example. Yes.
The thing about getting over time, you get attracted to someone. I mean, I saw it in a series in How I Met Your Mother.
Mm-hmm.
Is how did they call it? The manatee effect. At the beginning, you see her as a manatee. And then after a while, you start to see her as a what's it called, a mermaid.
Yeah.
After a while, so something like that was the example they put there. Was a joke there, but apparently there is a scientific truth about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
About the topic compatibility, is it something fixed or is it something that we can, in a way, grow over time? Because we talk right now about the spark and the emotions. But going back to the compatibility factors, is it something that we can fix?
To some extent, not that much, I would say. Because, again, if we think of compatibility as basically a state where we fit together or don't fit together, for us to fit together, if we don't, would mean that one of us has to change something, or maybe both of us, right? So it's very unlikely that people change their opinions, their values, their preferences, their lifestyle. It can happen. But if it doesn't happen, then we don't work on compatibility. But maybe rather than thinking that I should increase our compatibility, so make us more compatible, a better way to think about it would be, what are some actions that I can do so that even if we are polarized, even if we have different preferences, value, lifestyles, how can we come closer? So I accept that we stand here, But what are the strategies that we find to come closer, rather than thinking that one of us should change the way they are, or because that's not only difficult, but in most couples it would also be very unfair, to expect the other person to change things that belong to their person package, so who they are as a person.
Yeah, okay. If they're too tied to you, to the person who you are, then if you want to love me, but you're asking me to be someone else, that's maybe already like a limit.
Yeah. If it's something that happens in the relationship, so how you treat me, how I respond to you, if it's something in the interaction, in the communication, in the relationship, that we can work on. But if it's something that belongs only to me as a person, what I like, what I do in my free time, how I relax, there should not be the expectation that I change that part.
Mm. And when there's a couple and there's like two people who love each other deeply, and they realize they weren't the right for each other, what helps someone to accept that?
It can happen, right? That you are deeply in love with someone, but somewhere along the line you realize that you don't have the same plans for life or ideas about marriage or children. And it does happen. I'm also working with a lot of couples in this situation. And I think the first thing to do would be to differentiate between loving someone and being compatible with someone. So loving someone is an action. I choose to love you. I choose to respect you, to listen to you, to give you love. It's an active choice versus being compatible. Being compatible is a state, is a system, a systematic situation, right? So we cannot really change that part, but the part that I love you can still be there. So accepting that these are different, and that's why we are stuck in this situation. Second step would be to grieve some of the loss of this idea of a relationship, because when I'm in a relationship, I probably imagine how things would go, what type of future we will have. So taking some time to grieve that, to let that go. And ultimately also understanding that the other alternative is not the healthiest. So even if I accept that, we have different life goals, we want different, maybe you want children, I don't. And accepting the other partner's perspective is not necessarily the healthiest choice. So even if I don't want to break up, staying together is not necessarily better, because it will bring a lot of resentment, a lot of also remorse for things I wish I had done, but I cannot do, a lot of guilt. It will come out in conversations. It will come out in conflict. So it's hard, but it's not like the alternative is any better.
Yeah, like if one of the partners, let's say he doesn't want children, she wants to have children, and he, just for the sake of staying together, he said, all right, let's have them.
Yeah.
And in having them, but not changing his mind and feeling like a burden of having the children because I didn't want them in the first place, kind of thing.
Yeah. It feels like a sacrifice, and love should not be all easy, but it also should not feel like a sacrifice, a constant sacrifice.
Have you ever loved someone who's completely different from you, and what did you learn from that?
I think, romantically for sure. But even as friends, I think I have a lot of love for people that are very different. I think what I learned the most is, again, how not be so judgmental with their reality. When we encounter someone who's very diverse or different than us, it's easy to assume that we do things better, or why would they do things like that? It's easy to think in terms of power, like who is doing it better, who is doing it worse. But I think I really learned how to genuinely accept that differences are differences, and there's no necessarily value attached to it. And to the reality that I live, the truth that I believe in, they just happen to be my truth because I was born in this place, I was raised in this family. It's all it just happens like this, right? I was born in one of the thousands of alternatives that were possible, and so other people did, right? So when I come into terms with their reality, I accept it because it's one version of the reality. Saying my version is not their reality, it's one version of the reality. So I would say getting really acquaintance with this thought process and truly believing it, because it's easy to say, but to truly do it in everyday interaction it's so tricky.
And I mean, after working with so many international couples, what have you learned about love that no book or no textbook will teach you?
I think I learned that people are more flexible, more adaptable than we think, and they're also more similar than we think. So we usually learn in psychology, in textbooks, and podcasts that we are attracted to who is similar to us. We get along to who is similar. If there are differences, it becomes a struggle. And this is true. I'm not saying it's not. It's true. But we rarely talk about the creative strategies that also humans find to get together with a diverse world. So I think working with couples from so many different backgrounds and cultures really taught me how creative we can become with the strategies that we find. We are really smart in that regard. If we want to find a way, we do find a way. Even if psychology says that we are more likely to be compatible with similarity, still so many really diverse couples find good ways to do that. So we are more flexible, more adaptable than how we usually describe humans. And we're also more similar. So yes, we are from different cultures. We are very different. We speak different languages. We were raised differently. But at core, we're all humans, right? So we have very human fears of being abandoned, fears of being judged, very human needs, need to belong somewhere, needs to be loved, to be seen, right? So at core, we are more similar than different.
Mm. I mean, you're living it from first hand. I mean, you're dating someone from India, which is a very different culture from Italian culture, and plus the maybe German culture that you have adopted by living here for some years. And many people would ask, and that is it like this kind of like more distant cultures, can they really be compatible at some point? Because from Southeast Asia is a very different culture than Mediterranean one.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really hard? Is it easier than what the people think? How do you make that work?
Well, I think Indian culture and Italian culture, for example, they are less different than we assume. Yes, they're very far geographically, but I think they are very similar when it comes to hospitality, for example, or they also talk a lot with their hands, which we also do, communication, really good relationships, really proud of their food, So we have more in common than you would think. But I think ultimately, if we talk in general, two cultures that are very different and individuals from those cultures that are very extreme, I think it would be really hard to be compatible, right? So if I'm from a specific country and you're from a very different country and we both are very proud of our country and we are very good.
Catholic, for example, you're very Catholic, and then he might be very
Hindu or
that will be very, very hard.
Exactly. So the extreme positions, it makes it very hard. But usually people in international relationships are more on the moderate side. So they are, yes, I belong to that country, but I also traveled a lot. So I learned this and that. Or yes, I belong to that country, but I don't agree with this or that. I'm challenging some of my customs. So it's usually those people who get in international relationships more. So that helps. And then, ultimately it's effort and intention. We need to come to terms with the fact that love is not how we maybe learned from stories or from a general narrative. Love it's not that when we find someone compatible or when we find someone, that's when the happy ending starts. Then I'm done, I found someone. That's when the work begins, right? That's when I have to put in the effort. So again, people who are moderate and who are willing to put in the effort. And I think it can work. I mean, it works for so many. So.
Yeah. And you have studied, love through data, through research, through real life experience by giving therapy and speed dating events. But what's the hardest thing to accept about love or even human emotion that science still cannot explain?
I think the fact that we are not immune to love, even if we know so much about it. So of course, I researched love and relationships a lot, and a lot of people do. So we have this data. We know how it works. We know which brain parts are activated. We know the biology of it. We know it all. But we're still not immune to it. It still hits us a lot. We can be extremely smart or extremely knowledgeable about the processes, but we still fall into the traps. We still lose ourselves. We still lose our identity in relationship. We still don't know how to put boundaries. We still scream and shout during conflict. So just because we know it doesn't mean that we can apply it. Because love, it doesn't really work with logics or rationality. It works with things that we usually don't really understand well. It has to do with addiction. For example, it activates a brain region of addiction, of survival. It touches on very strong wounds, childhood trauma, familiarity, very unconscious processes, nonverbal, verbal. So it's a complex mix of things. And again, if we understand it all, it doesn't mean that it will not impact us. Like if you're a great baker, you know all the secrets about how to prepare the great cake. But when you eat the cake, you might still feel obsessed with this cake. You might still love it. It's delicious. It still has an impact on you, even if you know it all. Yeah.
Some people listening might be asking themselves, should love be that hard or this hard? And what would you tell them to help them know when to keep trying to fix the relationship and when it's time to let go?
I mean, in general, we should know that love is not easy, right? Falling in love is easy. Falling in love, like the action fall suggests, we fall. There's no effort. It's passive. We just fall, right? But loving is a different action. It's an active verb. It's something that I do towards someone, which means being patient with someone, supporting someone, listening empathically, putting good boundaries and respecting them. Like it comes in a lot of shapes. So it's more of a skill rather than, something that happens. So because it's a skill, it requires practice. We cannot just expect to do it easily. So if it's not easy, that's not the problem. But the problem becomes when it's not only not easy, but it's exhausting, it's draining. When you feel like you're walking on eggshells, you're overthinking everything, you feel more drained than happy. When stress and chaos are the baseline, so they don't just happen sometimes during conflict, but they become the baseline. I would say if your peace is the cost of the relationship, it's too expensive. That's when you should draw the line. So some effort is needed. It's not easy. It's not automatic. But if you start feeling these things that I just mentioned, it's probably too much. And maybe the other hard truth is that also love is not enough. Even if you love someone, in most situations, it's still not enough. There has to be also, as we said, compatibility, commitment, context, what is going on around you. There have to be a lot of actions that you put in. So just feeling love towards someone, that is not a strong enough reason to stay.
Alessia, what's coming next? Where can people find you?
We are running some events, some workshops, some speed dating events, and you can find everything on my Instagram, compatib.ale. On Instagram, and I'm also a couples counselor, so I'm on It's Complicated platform. I think that's all.
Great. It has been a big pleasure having this chat with you. I really enjoyed it. I hope a lot of people learn a lot about compatibility, about love, and whether they should keep trying to fix their relationship or if it's time to let it go. Alessia Marchi, thanks for being in the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss the next one. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. It really helps us reach more people and share more inspiring stories from those living in Berlin.